This is Dr. Charles Parker, and you're listening to Core Brain Journal. It's a place where I connect both fresh discoveries and interesting different perspectives from advanced mind science with the realities of real people and everyday life down on Main Street. Well, welcome, folks. Here we are one more time. This is Core Brain Journal, episode 041. Dr. Charles Parker coming at you one more time. And today we have an interesting guest right out of reality. She comes to us from having hit the pavement a number of times. Melissa Hood is an EDD, a doctoral candidate out in Texas. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself in a minute. Welcome, Missy Hood. Glad to have you on board.
Hi, how are you doing, Dr. Parker? Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to talking to you. You know, I was just talking to her a little bit briefly before we started, and Melissa Hood is a person who's really been out on the road of life. In a way, she's coming to us as an experienced human being, having dealt with the adversity of ADHD her whole life, and she has a provocative story to tell from the point of view that there's some pain involved, there's some problems, there's some self-recognition, and there are a number of episodes. It's not just one thing. She had a number of situations which led her to grow and actually now become a doctoral candidate in her life out at Concordia University right now. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Missy Hood lost, get this, 40 jobs in 15 years. I mean, is that some kind of record or what? She suffered and struggled to overcome her ADHD and was having a very bad time of it. Ultimately, Missy triumphed over her condition and has gone on to achieve great things, and she wants to take this time with us today to inspire others who have similar problems to pull their lives together and do the same thing. Upon completing her own research study at Texas State University, she decided to go ahead and share her own life story in an autobiography that would assist others in dealing with the same disorder. Her book, Memoirs of an ADHD Mind, God Was a Genius in the Way He Made Me, is going to be a book giveaway here at Core Brain Journal. And if you're on audio, you can come back to corebrainjournal.com/041 drawing, all one word, 041 drawing. And you can enter to be in the drawing for that book giveaway. So she's a busy published author, if I can say it all. Say two words at the same time, that doesn't work. And she's enrolled now in Concordia University's EDD program as she pursues her passion for teaching others in the field of, get this, transformational leadership. Today, Missy lives in Round Rock, Texas. I want you to tell us where that is. And she continues to counsel and raise up those who are deemed less likely to succeed. Missy, tell us a little bit about your personal life so we can get to know you.
Well, I'm an author, obviously, and you know that I'm also a student. I came out of the film industry, and I worked as a theatrical costuming designer and also was in live production for about 28 years, but it bored me. And it's because I'm right and left-brained, and so I didn't know that at the time. So I would have all these intellectual interests and things like that, and my creative friends were like, you know, what are you doing over here? and I kind of started wondering myself. And so I went back to school. I attempted school 3 times, and one thing led to another, and then one thing led to another, and then here I am. And so I never, had you asked me 25 years ago, Missy, in 25 years you're going to be an EDD candidate, I would have laughed. That was the farthest thing from what I ever dreamed would be happening. But here I am.
So an EDD is a doctorate in education, folks, in case you didn't catch that buzzword. And Missy, tell us where you were working in theater. Were you in L.A. or what were you doing?
No, sir. Actually, I had intentions on going to L.A., but it was really interesting, too, because of the way I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm about 20 miles outside of Austin. And the film industry as well as the music industry came here. And so now is the live music capital of the world, as well as we're like a little LA. That's what we're considered. And so I just worked in film in and around Texas, and I have friends all over the nation that are in the industry. And sometimes I will fly out to work on a project if I get bored in what I'm doing, but because I love, I have many interests. So yes, sir.
Missy, my wife and our friends love Austin, Texas.
Oh,
So
good.
we went down there, and we had a white van, and we had eight people, 4 couples, and we called ourselves the White Boys in the White Van Blues Tour. And we were out at the Broken Spoke doing the Texas two-step and having a really wonderful time. We love Austin, Texas, and the music down there. It really is God's country in terms of entertainment and really cool people that are just very hospitable and interesting and really well educated. A lot of people who are just really very a lot of fun to be with. So back to it. So Round Rock is right outside of Austin then, huh?
Yes, sir. It's about 20 minutes away.
So you know the Broken Spoke then.
I certainly do. And by the way, when you were here, did you check out all the good food? We've got tons of.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yes.
It was fun, and we went to the. I can't remember right at this moment the name. Sunday morning, the spiritual one down on Main Street down there, where it was just a wonderful morning. Sunday morning, you go in and they're singing blues spiritual music. And
Stubbs Barbecue?
Yeah. What was the name of it?
Stubbs Barbecue? I
think it may have been that. That's vaguely familiar. It's been about 4 years since we've been out there. But anyway, back to you and what's going on with you. So tell us about the real issue in your life. What happened to you? What was going on that actually transformed you to actually decide, recognize, come to grips with the fact that you were suffering with ADHD? How did that happen?
Well, when I was 22, my dad died, and up until that point, my dad was military. He had a military background. He was a full colonel in the Army National Guard, and before he passed away, he had been my rock. He had been my person that helped me, because they hadn't diagnosed the condition until about 17 or 18 years ago. Well, it's been 29 years since he passed away. So before he died, my life was so chaotic, and it was a mess. It was just a complete mess. I was a very angry person, a very, very frustrated young person, because I had all these dreams and all these goals, and I didn't know how to achieve it because of the way that I learned. And my dad was my go-to person, and then he passed away. And so I sat down with my mom and my brother one Sunday, and they're like, "Missy, you have to go back to school." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." I tried twice when my dad was alive, and I failed out. And I said, "You're asking the impossible of me." And my brother was like, "You have to have a way to take care of yourself." And so I went and hung out with a friend and had a long talk with God, actually. And I came to the conclusion I'd try again, and I made 2 rules in my own heart, and it was that I wouldn't listen to anything that anybody had to say that would make me question why I was there or want to quit. And as obstacles arose, I'd revert back to question number 1, or back to my first mission statement. And so it took me a little longer. I graduated after 6 years, and I attained my BA, and it was one of the most difficult things I'd ever tried to attempt in my whole life, honestly. It was just grueling. And I literally had professors all along the way who would tell me, "You're not college material, why are you here?" And which was very non-affirming. Yeah. But it made me angry enough to push harder. And I graduated, and, here I am, basically. I can tell you. I'm sorry, sir?
And ask you this question. Sorry to interrupt you for just a second, because I know a number of our listeners are thinking the same question I'm going to ask you right now. Did you do it through sheer force of will? I mean, did you use duct tape and tape yourself to the chair in the library? Did you take some medication? How did you actually make that happen?
You know, it is a miracle that I'm standing where I'm standing, because I didn't get diagnosed until I was 28 years old, and that was about a year and a half before I graduated college. I'm a late bloomer kind of a thing. We usually are. And I wished I'd gotten diagnosed earlier, because it wouldn't have been probably as big of a struggle. But for me, sitting in classes, it was actually very interesting, because the fact that I would even know to pay attention to the way that I learned, I would observe patterns in when I was sitting under one professor versus another, and their teaching styles versus my learning style, and was that a problem? And I'd go research it. I'd go just jump on the computer and fact find, and I just started kind of accumulating all of these different things in the back of my mind about me and the way that what it took me to push forward. And I made it. I mean, it was like climbing a huge mountain, but I made it, and so, but it was so hard. One of the hardest times, and that was during all the times when I was losing all the jobs, too, so I had double the stress. So it was just crazy.
Well, with those 40 jobs, were those in when you were in the media business, or what was going on there?
Well, I have always maintained dual careers. And I was forced to, because of the film industry being like you work on a project for a month and a half, and if you're lucky, they may last 2 months. But that's how long it usually takes to film a film. So when I didn't have work there, I would switch over to my temporary jobs and my temporary agencies and go to work in the clerical field. And those were where I was getting fired all the time, because I couldn't perform, and I didn't learn like other people. So my employers thought that I was stupid, or that I just couldn't do the job. And it was the most frustrating thing on the planet, because I knew I could do the job, and I knew I was capable of so much more. And so if they didn't fire me, they would leave me in these little menial positions. And I'm not better than anything. I'm not too good to do a job. Don't take this like that. But I knew I was smarter. I just knew my intelligence level was smarter. I was higher. But I was limited. I was so limited, and it was just, oh my gosh. So that's what I struggled with for probably another 10 years afterwards, until I started really, until one of my friends talked me into going back and getting my master's.
Now, did you get your master's? Again, forgive me, I am a psychiatrist, okay? I can't get out of it, so I'm doing my psychiatric thing, and I'm thinking about you as a person from my perspective. I apologize. But
no worries.
Did you take some medication? But that would be, from my clinical experience, that's the big turnaround for so many people. But nobody wants to take medication because they think medication is so completely done incorrectly. And to tell you the truth, it's done incorrectly a lot. That's the reason I wrote my book. But back to it, the reason that they don't go is because it is so speculative. It's a roll of the dice. It doesn't need to be speculative, but that's what happens. So did you take medication? Did you not do it? If you didn't take it, how did you do that?
I did. Actually, I started off with Adderall. And actually, that wasn't my first medication. It was Ritalin, the first one, and I hated it because it made me feel like a drone. But at the same time, I noticed that I could focus, and I noticed that my grades started improving. Like, I went from making a D in this one class to a straight A, and it was after I got on meds. And so after I fast forward into my master's program and did my research, I realized, looking back, that I thought, wow, my brain was able to function because of lack of misfiring, and that's what happens to, I call it I don't know what the clinical definition of this is, but I know that when ADHD kicks in, stress is the number one trigger of the condition. Well, we can't get away from stress, and so what happens when I'm on meds, what stress creates off meds is a misfiring, so to speak. I call it the stop-start process, where the brain, that's what causes distractions, and I go off on these bunny trails and things like that. But on meds, I didn't have that. And so my brain was able to maneuver into higher cognitive abilities and into higher critical thinking skills. And it did it quickly, if not faster than the average student. That's what was so interesting to me as I watched myself progress.
You clicked in. Fantastic. So then you got your master's degree. Now tell us a lot of us here, myself included, are curious about what is transformational leadership. If you could tell us about that, I appreciate it.
Transformational leadership is basically walking into a team environment, an office environment that has a lot of dysfunction, and not necessarily a lot of dysfunction, but usually some type of lack in it, and you're able to define the issues, and you're able to get the group together, get all the management staff together basically, and help them define those issues to move forward to where they're not a traditional type of command and control center basically, but more collaborative. And they're saying that that's what a lot of companies are really moving more into now, is more of a collaborative environment and a virtual environment. And so basically I help to raise up those teams.
So you get away from vertical management into collaboration is what you're saying. It's not, the whole hierarchy of command system is not there. It's how do we really pool our internal and perceptions, resources, observations into an improved way of thinking about things.
That's correct. Actually, it's interesting, too, because Walt Disney had accomplished that with his, you know how a lot of people have organizational charts and things like that, your traditional org charts? Well, Walt Disney had a circular chart. And so he was able to get every single person on every single level of his organization involved in the collaboration process. But I also think that was because he was a creative company. And so I think that determined upon the type of company that, in their goals, their mission statement, et cetera, et cetera.
You would love the book. I don't know if you're familiar with Edward de Bono, Dr. Edward de Bono, Six Thinking Hats. Are you familiar with that book?
No, that sounds interesting.
You will love that book because what you're doing is it's right up your alley, and you can use it every day for the rest of your life. You walk into a meeting, and he's really there. I've done some writing about it over on Core Psych when I was blogging on Core Psych. He was a friend of mine. We hung out down in Dallas, Texas for a while, but he's a very interesting guy. MD, PhD, faculty of Harvard and Oxford. Very, very bright guy who actually translates creative thinking into almost everyday conversation, useful tools to get problems solved rather than just thinking reductionistically and overly simplistically.
Yeah, that's what fascinates me, and I love talking with people, even from diverse backgrounds and difficult backgrounds and cultures and whatnot, because everybody, in my opinion, everybody brings something to the table. And I want to hear other people's opinions on things, and I want to see what their life walk has been like and the life experiences that they bring to the table so that we can all find solutions and make everybody feel like they have a voice. And so that's what I feel like is wrong in society today, is people feel like they don't have a voice. And so it's not just one group of people, it's all groups of people. So it just fascinates me.
So do you actually work with people occasionally to help them, guide them through some of the difficulties that they've had that are similar to yours? What happens in that regard?
Sir, actually I did it more through ministry, and it wasn't intentional. It just kind of happened because I really believe that like draws like. You draw people to yourself that are like yourself. And so I would draw all these deeply hurting people, and a lot of women who were having mental health issues and things like that, and I would guide them through processes, especially because a lot of them struggle with ADD, ADHD, and I recognized that. And so I was like, why do I keep drawing all these people? but I mean, sir?
Just similar perceptions of the world, yeah.
Oh, big time. But it was just fascinating to me, how you watch the transformation process and helping them through their life experiences and things like that, and over a period of years or time or what have you. And so a lot of them did well. Some of them have gone a different way, and it's just kind of a luck of the draw, to be honest with you, because of the choices people make.
Yeah, some people don't want to hear it. It's
nope.
Amazing. I mean, they can come in a tremendous amount of pain, and they're so determined to be a do-it-yourselfer. They really don't want somebody. They don't want to hear the advice, but they're in terrible pain. They want it, but they don't want it. And they present a terrible catch-22.
Yeah.
Because if you're a good messenger, no matter how good you are, if you're changing their world by a different perception, they are going to Many, not everybody, most people want to change, but there are a lot of people who are just stuck in their perception of the world, and they don't want to change that. They're just going to die by the sword. That's going to be what happens.
That's a good point, too. No kidding, because I've seen that even in my doctoral program where you bring different cohorts together, and they have this, I mean, the teachers purposefully combine the classes in a certain way, and then we have to talk about these really complex issues, but then you have people coming with different backgrounds and whatnot, and they're diehards, and they refuse. I will not be open to any other perception other than my own. And it really, I'm thinking, why are you here? You know, not to be rude, but yeah.
Well, it's so true in my business because, you know, I am a psychiatrist, and we do a lot of other things than just give medication. I mean, I've been into brain science for many years, and, you know, meds are one of the things we do, and one of the reasons we do them because there's usually a quick turnaround on the front end. But if they don't work, and meds oftentimes don't work predictably for biomedical, for real reasons, but the fact that they don't work predictably blows the entire therapeutic alliance. I'm never talking to another shrink again. I'm never going to talk. This is just not going to work. And all shrinks are crazy, all medicine's crazy. That is a public perception. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this program and having people like yourself on, because it's amazing how many people disparage good care and think that they know about good care when they really don't know a darn thing about good care from something they read in the New York Times, you know?
Wow, it's fascinating because I know from my own perspective, when I was forced to take the medicine, I recognized when I was progressing, and I had always been an avid exerciser. I always have been, and even to this day. And I thank God for that, but I've always tried to also watch, you know, what I eat and have good nutrition. Not perfect about it, but I noticed when I really got strict about that, about my nutrition and my exercise, my brain function improved, and I actually eventually came off meds to where now I only take meds maybe, and I don't say this arrogantly, I'm just telling you honestly, maybe once every 6 months. And that's when things are really bad around me, and I keep them on me. But, you know, I would still, and I tell people this, I say it and I cringe, but for the younger kids, because in my opinion, the younger the child, it's the less mature the brain's going to be, and so they almost don't have a choice but to place the child on meds, and it's really hard for the parents because they think, well, my child's not acting the way that they normally do. Well, no, because they're not as hyper. The medicine is curtailing that, so they're having to readjust, you know, and get to know their child a little bit better, you know, on meds. So.
Yeah, I think there's a pervasive, profound ignorance about how the meds should be used in the country. It's the reason I've done all those videos. I got over 50 videos on YouTube about how to do the meds correctly. And,
wow.
You know, it's youtube.com/Dr. Charles Parker if you want to go over there. And I've got it broken down on my, you know, my channel with diagnosis, dosage, dosing strategies, the drop in the afternoon, what's wrong with the medications, the difference between amphetamines and methylphenidate, the whole thing. I've been doing that for, I don't know, for a long time. I started doing YouTubes a while ago. And so the information is out there. It's readily available. It's totally free. A person just has to go and think about it. And if their doctor doesn't quite get it, then the doctor can look at the videos. I mean, this is because I've lectured nationally for 20 years on how to do the meds right. And it isn't me. It isn't me. I'm not telling you about me now. I'm telling you what I've been taught by the world's best. I mean, I couldn't go around lecturing on these meds without having some very sophisticated guys teach me how to do it. So what I bring to the table is my experience of having got it wrong when I was trying to do it right based on what I was told to do. Every time you get it wrong, when you think you're doing it right, you have to change what you're thinking. And I think that's a big problem, just as we were talking about in a different circumstance a moment ago. It's a problem in medicine because it's like, I'm not going to change what I'm thinking. This is what everybody says should be happening, but it's not happening, so I can't do anything else. I got to go. I'll talk to you later. And
It's interesting to me, too, like you talk about perceptions and things like that and changing your thinking, because a lot of these kids come in, I know I did, when I came in before meds, and I just had such low self-esteem, and I had this perception of myself that I've been told all my life I was stupid, and you do have to readjust your thinking and kind of, you don't have to acclimate, but I mean you have to come up into a new place and perceiving yourself and looking at yourself a different way, because it wasn't who I was. And when I realized in my master's, my professors would say, Missy, you're brilliant, blah, 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 and I would be like, oh, okay, But then I thought, maybe the joke is on me for ever believing all those lies about myself. And so it's just it's like losing weight. If you weighed a lot all your life and you lose all that weight, you have to adjust to the new you. Well, this is kind of the same antidote, if you will.
Well, I think one of the things there touches on an important point that we can both share. I'll see if you agree with, if you agree with me or not. But my feeling is that a person's self-esteem comes almost exclusively from self-mastery. So if you handle yourself well, you're going to feel good about yourself. If somebody tells you you're terrific, it's okay. You may get a 50% on that. But you're going to get close to 90% if you know you did it right, if you had some intentionality with the way you did it, and you put the effort into it and you did it well. Somewhere in there, you're much more likely to have a self-esteem come out of that than a pat on the back. Unless you're so psychologically dependent, or in fact, cognitively dependent, as you may have been with your father. You didn't say this when you were talking about his passing. There's a mental dependency if somebody else is providing a prefrontal cortex when yours isn't working.
Right. That's a good point.
It's not an emotional dependency. It's, I need that person for me to deal with the real world because I can't deal with it. And yet the person feels a dramatic grief. Yes, it's their father. Yes, they love their father. But there's also this cognitive dependency of, I need somebody to sort the world out with me. And they very frequently will hook up, marry, hang out with people that tell them what to do or have an opinion.
Oh, my goodness.
Just this is how I'm going to get through life, is I'm just going to find somebody that's going to deal with life for me, and I'll just hang in the shadows and keep my mouth shut.
Oh, my gosh, you just pinpointed one of the major issues in my book that I used to always talk about was about Good Samaritans. I used to draw the most controlling people because they would be drawn to me thinking that my world was in utter chaos and they were doing me this huge favor, and they'd come in and they'd start abusing me. And verbally, it starts off very subtly, verbally, then it gets really aggressive, and you know how that spans out. But
yeah, they call it passionate, I love you, so I'm going to really tell you what to do.
Oh, gosh. But I really did. It took me a few years until I recognized the pattern, and I thought, I don't want your brand of love. That's not love. And so I stayed away, and I just got to know myself a little better. And I haven't allowed myself to date very much because of my taking the time to get to know myself. And I've just spent time really going back to school and doing things that built me up, because I really found that I didn't really know me.
And then when your self-mastery comes up, you perceive the world and you handle the world the way you see it. That builds your self-esteem right there.
That's very true. Very, very true. And for ADHD people, we're literal thinkers anyway. We're literal people. We say what we see. And so our whole world almost seems to need to be in check, if you will, in order for us to have a high self-esteem. I don't know what you think about that, but that's what I'm starting to learn about myself as I grow at 50.
Well, we're saying the same thing again, but a different way. Because what happens is you're saying when you are mastering your world, when you are handling your world, you're comfortable. Because you're making the decisions that prove useful and constructive in your life. And when you're not doing that and you're making decisions that are destructive or painful in your life, you have to pay the price, and your self-esteem pays the price.
Well, that's a great Great analogy. It's a great fact, actually. But because I definitely paid a hefty price when I didn't understand my world, and it's like, they say that. Have you ever heard doctors say ADHD can be a curse or it can be a blessing, depending upon how well you master it? And I think that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and it's true even if a person doesn't have ADHD. I mean, basically ADHD compounds the problem, because I really think it's more, I have a problem with the whole diagnosis of ADHD, which we've written about extensively in a lot of the videos, but I think the real issue is more often than not, from a brain function point of view, not attention deficit disorder, but attention abundance disorder.
Why do you say abundance?
Because the person's thinking too much.
Ah, yes.
What happens is they think and think and think and think, and they can't decide because they can't sort the myriad of intelligent observations that they have. They can't put them in boxes. So they remain stuck in brain spaghetti.
I agree. But you know why we do that? Because we are, and I feel like I'm tooting my own horn, but don't take it like that. We operate at such a high level of IQ. We have so many interests.
Agree with you.
And you're right, our brains are going 100 miles an hour all the time, but a lot of that is, too, I believe, from my own life experience, is that the less mature my brain was, the less able my brain was able to organize information. And that's the whole key of my whole ability to master ADHD, is that my brain's main objective is to organize information and act as a filter to where I can process it and maneuver through life effectively. And so people who don't master the condition aren't able to filter information, so they stay in a simpler lifestyle, a simpler job, but they stay miserable. Not all, some are content. I shouldn't label it like that, but but they know that they want to go forward. They have a dream, but they don't know how to get there.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking from exactly the same thing. Now, I'm going to tell you a book that you could use, because we're thinking so similarly, and I really don't know you. This is our first serious conversation ever, but we're on the same path, and we have different life perspectives, but we're right here, right this minute, we're on the same path together, okay?
Agreed.
And what happens is you have qualified several times in your conversation that you're not a reductionistic thinker. You don't think in black or white terms. You enjoy the complexity, and you want to, even in your vocation, you want to bring together the complexity of human perceptions and put them in a productive outcome that works for the group in question. So you're a complex thinker. You appreciate the complexity, but you know the need for the organization of the complexity. And
agreed.
So the book that you would like is Alfred Korsybski's Science and Sanity. And it's if you go to Core Brain Journal, it's down. If you look at the page on the front page, it's in the lower left-hand corner of the footnote on that page. And there's a link for it that's a global link, global Amazon link, so you can go and look at it in whatever currency, whatever country you're in. And that book will take you where you want to go, because you can reference that book every single time. That and the Edward de Bono, the Edward de Bono Six Thinking Hats would be those two for you. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just discussing it with you, because you're an academic person. You're looking at a way to pull the thoughts together, and Science and Sanity is saying if we don't really think about the complexity, we're thinking from an insane perspective.
I agree.
And what happens with science, it kind of goads you into thinking reductionistically. And if you're not aware of that, you're going to oversimplify complex situations. You're going to take time out of it. You're going to take context out of it, which is what we do in the current diagnostic coding system. And we call a person a label based on how they look to an outside observer that has nothing to do with thinking or brain function.
Absolutely.
Hyperactive and inattentive is a fashion show, in my opinion. It's a Paris fashion show, and we're just sitting there watching the girls go by and say, she looks good, she doesn't look good. She's bipolar, she's depressed, whatever. And all of it's based on appearances. And really, the science, the evolving neuroscience of brain function, is based on the complexity of human thought that includes cognition. Right now, our diagnostic code does not include cognition unless you have traumatic brain injury or Alzheimer's. I mean, how's he thinking? Oh, it must be Alzheimer's or traumatic brain injury. I mean, ADHD is not considered a cognitive problem. I mean, is there something what is wrong with that? And it's a purely cognitive problem.
Why do you say that? Why do you say it's not a cognitive problem? Now you've got me curious.
Is. It's not labeled as a cognitive problem. It's labeled as a behavioral and appearance.
I see.
You're hyperactive or inattentive based on how I see you. That's my diagnosis of you. That isn't what's going on in your brain. That's how I see your brain from the outside.
Okay.
So I'm calling you a name, and I hope you'll get along with me.
Right. No, I totally agree with you, actually. And that's interesting. That's very interesting you say that, because in my master's thesis, I was giving my orals and my writtens, and I was arguing with the professor about developing structure so that the person could actually develop their cognitive abilities. And I said, that's the depending factor. If you teach that child how to develop their own structure, they'll excel, because you give their brain a break to where the brain can cognitively develop. And he was like, so you're saying I just need to give them something to hang their tools on? And I said, that's exactly right. That's exactly right, sir.
Yeah, so you're going to love that Korsivsky book, I'll tell you that.
I've written it down.
It's definitely deep. But you'll get a kick out of it, because it's something, anytime you reference, you can listen to a conversation after you've read that book. Mm-hmm. And you can, your brain, just like a dog chasing a rabbit, you're immediately on the reductionistic concepts that are coming up. That's why I'm so strong for let's evolve the diagnosis of ADHD. Let's evolve all of the diagnostic subsets and bring in biomedical reality, which is present throughout the world, available through laboratory testing, brain measurements. Why don't we bring biologic reality into the diagnostic protocol? If we're treating people biologically, why wouldn't we do that? It doesn't make any sense.
You know, they were saying, and I had it in my research, that a lot of the causes of ADHD are because of lack of protein.
Now, that's definitely a part of it. I mean, this copper, cryptopyrrole, undermethylation. There are many, many reasons that people have ADHD that are beyond medication. It's one of the reasons so many people are treatment failures. And so what happens is they say, well, it's not medicine. Maybe it wasn't even ADD. In fact, what are the targets, doctor, that we're shooting at? What should we be looking for? This is after the diagnosis is made. And the doctor frequently say, I mean, are you hyperactive? No, I'm not hyperactive. Well, maybe that's it. Are you paying attention better? I don't know. What do you mean? It gets very confusing. Whereas if you use brain function criteria, you can see whether you're improving. And those are all outlined in those videos I got on YouTube.
That's fascinating
Just
to me.
sitting right there. It's like it's basic. And executive function is the new word, and executive function is measurable in any office, anywhere in the world, by just asking a few basic questions. You don't need a $3,700 brain scan to look at executive function. It's either there or it's not there.
Man, that's fascinating to me, actually, because I think that the world right now, even parents who have children that suffer with the condition, they try to oversimplify. And it's through this labeling process. And so what you're saying is basically there's a set of questions that we can go through to let you see exactly where your child's brain function is at, so you are better able to assist them. So, oh, man, that's phenomenal.
Well, sorry to interrupt you. I get excited about this.
No.
But Edward de Bono is a great guy, and he's got a word called EBNE, E-B-N-E, excellent but not enough. That's what's going on in the world regarding psychiatric diagnosis and treatment. We're doing well. The meds are good, but one of the reasons everybody's so dissatisfied with psychiatry and meds and just don't want to see the doctor is because it's so imprecise. I mean, we've got to get past the fashion show, and that is what's going on. So,
I agree.
I'll get off my soapbox. I get a little excited. I hit this pretty hard very often during the day. I just happened to get into it with you because you're obviously a knowledgeable person and you're into it. So.
Well, this is my field too, so I'm all engrossed in the conversation as well. But it is fascinating to me because you did make some really valid points about how people over-label things and how different society in general, they label each other so much that it's like, but do you understand the true definition of this and what it was comprised of? And it's actually, if they're going to simplify it, you also stipulated that with the executive skill list and being able to let them see, okay, this is where your brain functions at. This is what you need to work on with your child. And so,
yeah, this is the function that we're looking at, not the label we're looking at. See, function takes place in context and time. Now, I'm getting a little deep here. Hitch up your drawers because we'll just finish this and get it done. But context and time are Korsivsky's point. If you have a problem in a certain reality, what is the reality that causes that cognitive problem? If it's unmanageable cognitive abundance in changing variables, it could be that you have an executive function problem that only is realized in that context. Like in my book, New ADHD Medication Rules, I point out Freud's post-Victorian paper in Vienna on character. And he said he had a paper called I'm a recovering psychoanalyst, just by the by. I took 7 years of psychoanalytic training and practiced psychoanalysis for many years when I was younger. And it was a real privilege. The people I hung out with were and was taught by were world class. I mean, one of my supervisors was the president of the American Psychoanalytic Association. So I had a really good group of people, and I love them as human beings and people and the whole concept. But here's the deal. Freud, I think it was around 1914, something like that. The paper was called Those Wrecked by Success. And he said that what happened was people would get into, they would become successful and they would undo themselves in success. And in those days, Freud didn't know about ADD. All he knew was about the unconscious. So he said the reason they fell apart when they became successful is because they had a fulfillment and a guilt over an unrealized Oedipal conflict. They had actually achieved an Oedipal victory. They got married to their mother, metaphorically. And they became guilty about it, and they had to undo themselves. They couldn't stand the guilt of being married to their mother. Well,
they couldn't adapt to their person of who they were really meant to be.
I mean, there may be a measure of some of that's true, but that's not the issue. The issue is they enter a different reality that has more variables than they're accustomed to dealing with, and their executive function can't deal with that context of reality and the new timing that they have to face in that reality. And they fall apart. That's executive function until proven otherwise.
So is that like being made aware, having your perceptions opened to a different reality that you weren't expecting because of all those variables, and they weren't emotionally prepared to deal with those variables?
They weren't emotionally or primarily cognitively prepared. They didn't have the organization system in place. So even with you've had ADD. So, to make it personal, I don't know you really, but I'm just talking with you because I think you're a very straightforward person. With your degree, when you go into a new reality, you could find yourself regressing if you don't have the preparation in mind for an approach to that new reality. If you walk in there and think, I'm going to do it, it's no problem, I'll talk to you later, can do, because your self-confidence is there, you have to know that your new reality is going to take a moment for you to find boxes to put things in, because you're in a different reality. And a different reality is just that, it's a different reality. And if you think...
that's interesting. That's interesting. You're saying you're hitting everything on the nail right now around me, because you're right, for one, on that regard, but I pray all the time, and I always pray that every level that God takes me into, that I'm able to adjust very quickly, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, but being able to adjust on that level. But you're right, if the tools aren't there, my giftings can get me there, but I've got to have something to sustain me once I get there. That's what I think you're saying, right?
Yep. And you have to have a cognitive approach to that new reality. You have to think, okay, this is different. You have to actually have an awareness. This is different. What are the differences, and how am I going to approach them? What are the tools that I've got? You mentioned a moment ago. What are the tools that I've got, and how am I going to organize this from a more productive, effective way, and be prepared for the change as opposed to being bowled over? I've seen, really hundreds of people bowled over by being promoted and by achieving their goals. They get into it, they feel good, oh my gosh, I'm there, and they turn inside out. I'll tell you one quick story. I had a family practitioner come in and see me. He was valedictorian of his high school class, summa cum laude, magna cum laude in college, went to medical school, graduated one of the top few in his medical school class, went ahead and did his internship and got into family practice, family medicine. He wanted to be there for the people, and he wanted to do family practice. In his residence, he became chief resident naturally, and he just was great. He got out of residency, fell completely apart, started running around with his nurse, left his wife completely freaked out. He had no internal structure to handle that new reality.
Wow.
He had the reality all the way through because the reality and the goals and everything was all set for him. It's like being in the Navy. You see a lot of people in the Navy, get out of high school, go in the Navy, do 22, whatever years in the Navy, get out of the Navy, grow a beard, buy a Harley, and drive to California. They're gone. They're gone. And the Navy structure fixed him, as did his medical structure, until he went into private practice on his own without a partner and nobody there. And he lost it. So, and that person did suffer with an executive function problem, and very fixable. He just wouldn't have been recognized because he was such a high-producing guy. If you were looking to diagnose him based on the limited current code, which is hyperactive or inattentive, that would not be the right diagnosis for that human being. If you looked at him from the context of Korsivsky, science and sanity, context, reality and change, and executive function, he was acting without thinking in a new context. And he was one of those people that Freud wrote about, those wrecked by success. But he was not suffering from an unconscious conflict. He was suffering from the reality that he couldn't handle because he didn't have an internal structure for it. He never developed it.
Wow, that's phenomenal, man. That's really, really interesting to me, too, because when you were talking, I actually, it made me go back to our first conversation about when you were talking about me and being able to have tools, but it's almost as if on every new level we have to have a new set of tools.
Yeah.
I'm a simplistic thinker in that regard, so I hope I'm not oversimplifying.
No, that's true. No, it is true. Now, you can have certain tools that you say, look, I'm a human being, and this what works for me. Now, I've done this myself because I didn't, the issue, people ask me if I've had ADD. I mean, I think I've had executive problems, but I've never been on medication. I think I've had poor judgment. I've had impulsive judgment. No question about that. I've done things wrong in my life, but I've done what I could to learn from them, but I haven't needed to be on medication because I keep turning out products and working out what I'm going to do. But bottom line is, when I go into a new situation now, I'm aware that this is my pattern with human beings, and if they work with me in this context, fine. If they don't, they're vaporized. I'm not going to chase them because I am a natural guy that tries to do everything I can to save whoever's in anywhere near me, okay? And if they work with me, fine. If they don't work with me, go somewhere else, because I'm not going to, I'll chase you for a while, but I'm only going to chase you if you do 50% with me. And Agreed. If you don't do 50%, sayonara, it's been fab, got to go.
Agreed. And that's fair.
It works. And then what happens is, and I do it respectfully, I'm not mad at the person, I just realize their limitations, and I realize I can't take my life and just chase people who are running the opposite direction. So,
man, I could sit here and talk to you for hours.
I enjoy talking to you, girl. It's a lot of fun.
Your family probably wouldn't appreciate it.
Well, all the time I'm talking to you, I think about being in Austin, you know?
Oh, man. Well, you guys will have to come back.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah, it's fun. We got a lot going on. So, well, listen, do you have any, first of all, we're tell our listeners, you and I talked before, and we're going to have in the show notes, we're not going to have it on this audio, but by the time the audio is produced and this comes out, you will have a website. It will be alive, and we will have that live website in the show notes. I can't tell you what it is right now because when we're recording is before the website goes live. So, do you know what the name of it's going to be, girl?
I think it's just going to be under melissahood.com. They're going to put it under my branding.
Cool.
So we'll make it simple. But there's a lot of Melissa Hoods out there. So if not, then they can click on to Tame Your Braino, which is my WordPress site, and that'll take them into my author site as well. Or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm all over the social media scene.
Now, are you on all these things? Are you Missy Hood or are you Melissa Hood?
On Tame Your Braino, it's actually Missy Hood, and everything else is under Melissa Hood.
Okay, good. Thanks. Well, that gives us a place to go because a lot of our listeners are on social media and they'll chase you down. You're a delightful person to talk to. We appreciate you sharing your story. I mean, just a fantastic story.
Well, it's been a fun interview, I'll tell you that, sir. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you. We'll do it again sometime, Missy. Thanks for listening to Core Brain Journal. We're working every day behind the scenes to bring you reports that connect research benches with those street trenches. Here we share the complexity of mind science because, as you know, details really do matter. One of the most pervasive, misunderstood challenges is how commonplace medications, like those written for ADHD, are used so regularly without clear guidelines. If you think you'd like more specifics, take a minute to download my 2-page PDF packed with video links and references on the absolute essentials of how to start ADHD medications. They're easily available at corebrainjournal.com/start. Thanks for listening. Do connect and stay tuned. Together we can make a difference.